Hey guys, this is Bluffmunkey back again for Sonic Academy, and in this video I want to take a quick look at how to create that trance piano that keeps cropping up in trance tracks for decades and decades and decades. So let's get stuck straight in. Okay, so this video came about as I was browsing the Beatport trance charts the other day, and it struck me that the trance piano that we all know and love still keeps cropping up in all of these trance tracks, even now, after 2 or 3 decades. And I think it was originally popularized by the Robert Miles Children track. I'll probably play it in the background or something. It's one of those really iconic sounds that we remember from our youth, or not so much youth in my case, but you know what I mean. Ostensibly it's just a piano, but there's a couple of things that we can do to it to make it sound a bit more trancey. So that's what I want to have a look at now. So I've created this little mini project as I usually do. It's almost like a break. So it gives us something to work to. Now, the thing about these trance pianos is, with trance tracks, there's usually so much going on that it has to be something that's going to cut through the mix. And one thing you'll notice, if you have a listen to that, I've played it already, but if you have a listen to that Robert Miles track, there's a very specific delay time, which I think a lot of trance producers still use. So one thing I've done is I've used an instance of Anna 2, and I'm keeping it very simple because really, what makes it trancey comes down to the effects. Well, first of all, it comes down to the use of the correct piano, which we'll touch on in a minute. So I just want to play this little snippet of something I've put together. It's basically a chord progression. Imagine this used in a break or something like that. And that's pretty much it. So the question is, how did I create this? Well, the first things first, we need to choose the right kind of piano sound. Thinking back to what I said, it's something that has to cut through what will almost always be a fairly busy trance mix. Now, it doesn't matter so much in a breakdown like this, but when you've got 50 other channels going and you're in the drop and the melodic line is being reinforced by this piano, it has to cut through everything else. You know, if it's gonna be layered on top of super saws, it needs to be able to shout, doesn't it? So to that end, let me just open up a fresh instance of Anna 2 here, and I'll show you how I started this. So let's initialize this patch. So what I want to do is I want to come into the sampler, and I'm going to go into the multi-samples. Now, really, you're going to need something with multi-sampling capability to do this any justice, because if you're just using a single piano sample, once you get past about 4 or 5 semitones either side of the root note where you sampled piano, it's going to sound pretty crappy. So having a look at a couple of these pianos built into the multi-sample expansion, the first one we come across is the 90s dance piano. Let's give ourselves some release. That sounds like a cry for help. So that's like the Korg M1 piano, that infamous Korg M1 piano from the 90s, the dance piano. We're going to skip over Bright because that's the one I used. We're just going to go through a couple of examples of pianos you wouldn't use. The other one, this piano soft, it's something you'd recognize from film scores and ambient music, that kind of thing. And it's where the piano has been played very gently. You know, that kind of thing. But really the one we want is piano bright. So something's like that, something that's going to cut through the mix. Now, in terms of processing, we just don't need this anymore. I just wanted to show you how I sourced my sound source. Anyway, so really it's all down to effects. There's not really any processing going on apart from a bit of EQ built into Anitu. So let me just take all of these off. First thing I did was added a tiny, tiny little bit of chorus. We don't want a lot of chorus because it's going to smear the piano too much. That's not strictly necessary. It's just something I chose to add in this case. So the next thing I added was, we're going to come back to compression in a second. So the delay, this is important. So there's me. That might not be in the right key, but that's the Robert Miles thing. So if we have the delay set on a quarter note, what happens is when we play the melodic lines in, even if it's eighth notes or quarter notes, that quarter note delay really does help emphasize that rhythm. So it actually works with this style of music. So that's why I would tend to keep it on a quarter note delay. I mean, it might seem like a minor thing, but I think in terms of what we're trying to achieve, I think it's quite important. The next thing will be reverb, of course. In this case, I chose to go for quite a long decaying plate, quite big. And that's where it starts to sound trancey. Next thing is some compression. So we've got a tiny little bit of attack. I'm compressing it quite hard, but really it's just to help push that sound a little bit more. Really, we're just trying to over compress it, so to speak. And probably pull that ratio, pull that threshold down a little bit more even. Turn the ratio up. So it's just, you can see it grabbing onto the attack portion of the piano. Now, compressing a piano isn't something you'd normally do because a piano tends to be quite an expressive and dynamic instrument. But in this case, remember this is about use cases. In this trance piano, we do want it compressed. And then the last thing I've done is I've added some EQ. So we don't necessarily want bottom end in this. We're going to be doing it on top of loads of other stuff. Bass, super saws, all the other stuff that goes along with the trance track. So we don't need this low end. And obviously, we want to preserve this high end. So this really does brighten things up a bit. And something else to note as well, we've got this little boost. Where have I got this? About 1400 hertz in this case. But this is something to consider as well. When you're EQing this piano, this boost here, this is going to be one of the tools that helps really place the piano in the track that you're making. So don't pay any attention to the frequency that I've got this boost at, because have a listen to this. So that's going to be a very powerful tool to help place your piano in your trance track so that it stands out above other elements, because there's going to be quite a lot of stuff going on in that mid-high range. So having a listen to it again, what we can do is if I turn all the effects off, it's going to be fairly quiet in this case, but have a listen to it without the effects on. So it still sounds like an okay piano, but putting the effects back on, and really this is a case of, it's not a case of sound design, it's a case of which effects we're going to use. One note. In fact, what we can do is just have a quick look at the difference between the bright piano, this multi-sample. See, this is far more artificial. I mean, it may work in whatever you're doing. This may be the one to go for, but to my ears, the bright piano sounds more like a more realistic piano. The Korg M1 dance piano, whilst being a very effective sound, doesn't work in this instance, I don't think. it sounds far more artificial to my ears, and the soft piano won't cut through the mix at all. Nice ambient sound. Hang on, let's lower this down a bit. So yeah, get the right kind of piano in the first place, browse through your piano collection, see what you got, and then smother it with delay, compression, reverb, maybe a little bit of chorus, and EQ. I hope that helped, guys. See you again soon. Cheers.